So in our position, well, here we're obviously down a bishop, and the king is about to take our c6 pawn. However, this king is kind of running a little short on squares because, well, a b6 is protected by our pawn, c4 is protected by our pawn, and d5 is protected by our pawn, and b4 is surprisingly controlled by our a2 knight, which is kind of in a bad position actually, but it proves to be useful enough for us. So that means that this king's only two escape squares are d6 and the c6 pawn. So, well, our two checks are two reasonable checks. That means not counting rook takes e5. Well, are a bishop to e7 check and bishop to b6 check. So, well, basically, both moves have one common error. It just forces the king to take our c6 pawn, or in other words, forcing the enemy to do what we want it to do. So instead, there's a couple ways to control the two escape squares. First is king to c7, and then we're preparing bishop to e7-8. However, f6 basically ruins our chances because, well, of course, a e7 check is well met by f takes e7. So instead of that, well, king to d7, well, the same f6 trick doesn't work now because of our rook to e6. As that blocks this discovered check, and now instead of our king being in the way of our bishop to b6 checkmate is now unavoidable. Like, no matter what you do, e6 is coming up, for example. So it's going all the way back. Instead of f6, e6 actually gets the job done because now f takes e6 is met by f takes e6 check again, and now we're kind of feeling this extra pressure of white's extra material because king to c7 is met by bishop to e5, and now our whole position is falling apart by dominoes. So instead of all this, well, now our king has proved useless to guarding the d6 and c6 squares. So instead, well, how else can we guard these two important squares, like to form a mating net? Well, then the only other choice is to play rook to e6, temporarily guarding these two squares. Okay, so now, well, obviously, not like accepting our sacrifice, like by playing f6 is met by checkmate, straight checkmate. So white has to take a rook now, but now, well, if we go all the way back, before, the problem of playing this was that f6 was the problem, right? And so we can't checkmate with our bishop, right? However, now that we played this little rook sacrifice, now this pawn is basically gone, and then there's no more f6 to stop us. So then king to c7 is a game-winning move, because no matter what white does, for example, e takes f7, hoping to make a queen, but before he can even get that done, bishop to e7 is forced checkmate.